Welcome back, it's Smashboss here, and the first thing I want to say in this video is thank you for 2000 subscribers. And now that we've reached this amount, this is also a special video today. And in this video I decided to make a tutorial for how to make a good troll level in Mario Maker, because I think that's one of the few types of tutorials that I've not really found on YouTube so far. I mean, there's Kaizo tutorials, there's all kinds of tutorials, but I never really found a troll level tutorial. So I decided to put some things together that are important if you want to make a good troll level. And of course, making a good troll level always starts with making a good troll, because I mean, even if you have a perfectly designed and good looking level, if all the trolls in the level are garbage, then the troll level itself is also gonna be garbage. So the number one thing to not do is just to use the trolls that are most commonly used and also considered lame by now. For example, the classic hidden troll Kaizo block in front of a pit. I mean, that was maybe funny in Kaizo Mario, but now, so many years later, it just seems lame to still use the same troll over and over again. However, that does not mean that you cannot use hidden blocks to troll people at all. It just means that you have to mix up this basic idea a little bit more. The smallest improvement that I could maybe imagine is to not put the hidden block on the way forward, but on the way back. So here there's this outline, but if the player jumps into it, he realizes there's nothing there, which also makes the player feel safe to jump around, because he can actually check and there's no hidden block there. So now the player needs to go back and find the P-switch or hit the P-switch, and on his way back there is the Kaizo block. I mean, it's not much of an improvement from this one, since it's still basically the same lame Kaizo block above the pit thing. However, there was at least some thought that went into this troll. So then this design can be improved even more. So this time the hidden block is right here in an area where the player wouldn't never really expect it to be. And the troll is still, I mean, it's still a hidden block that trolls the player, however in a completely different way this time. So here the player jumps right here to hit the switch. However, if the player hits the switch, a launcher drops down and still blocks the path. And then, if the player wants to hit the P-switch, he realizes that he never had to hit the on-off switch in the first place, and that's the troll. So if you end up in this area, of course, there is a small risk that the player will check this spot immediately, but I mean, just from looking at this without knowing the location of the hidden block, it looks straightforward. Why would you go here if you cannot do anything here right now? So first go here, then hit this block, then go back, and then realize that you never had to do this in the first place. And as I said, in all three of these examples, the troll is the hidden block. However, in this example it's used very lame. In this example it's a small improvement, but it's at least an improvement. And in this example right here, the hidden troll block is used in a creative way where the player might not expect it. Then something else that is also important is the silliness factor of a troll, because of course a troll level is built around the idea that the player is going to die over and over again. And in order to make this fun for the player, the deaths themselves must have something funny to them. once again, if I just use the oldest trick in the book, the lame hidden Kaizo block, nobody's gonna find this death funny. However, if I use a different setup, for example, I put one of these bouncy mushroom platforms underneath the crate in the lava, and this has the effect that now if I stand on the crate and I wait for too long, the crate is gonna bounce on the platform and put me up into the spike. And in both cases the troll lies right here with this crate. However, this bounce to spike death is still a lot funnier than just jumping into a hidden block. So here is yet another example of how the same troll idea can be used in two different ways, one bad, one good. So here the idea of the troll is to make the player think that he has to duck because there are spikes right above the door where the player needs to jump to. However, actually the player can just do this and will not hit the spikes at any time. But if the player decides to duck and jump off of the spring while ducking, even if he's Big Mario, then he will just get trapped because actually the hidden blocks above the spring are still activated. However, that's the most basic way of using this troll once the setup or the idea comes into your mind. It's just the smallest possible setup that somebody could build to use this as a troll. However, this design right here is much more complicated, but it has the same core mechanic. So the player once again has a mushroom and he also has a spring in this setup. So in order to go through the door, the player needs to get up there as Big Mario. Once again, there's the spike to make the player think that he needs to duck jump once he has the spring in position. However, there's one step more in this troll, and that is to put the spring down here in order to obtain the power block. The power block is also needed to kill the Muncher, and only once this all happened, then the actual troll comes into play. So all of this other stuff right here was just basically kind of a distraction from the actual troll, because the player expects to get trolled at any time, and after all of that worked, the player feels really safe that he did everything right. However, the troll only starts, and in this setup also the death after getting trolled is a lot funnier than the last one where you just fall into a spike pit, because this time a hidden block gets activated. That one releases a flame that travels a long way through the level. At the same time, the Super Mario 64 troll music starts to play, and the flame goes all the way through the level just to come back to you and kill you then. So, as I said, it's the same core mechanic as right here. It's just a lot more effort put into this troll. And in the end, this will also make the troll a lot better. So then, here's a second example, also with a good and with a bad version. However, this time, looking at the two versions, they don't actually look that different. However, there are still some improvements to be made. So the troll in both of them is once again exactly the same. And that is to activate this bomb, which will release the mushroom, and the mushroom goes along the top. So naturally the player wants to follow things so that they don't get out of sight, because he always wants to look what's happening. However, this is the troll, because by going over there to follow the mushroom, you can also spawn this cannon on the way back. So the solution is, of course, just to let the mushroom go over there by itself and then come back to you. However, as you can probably see right now, this takes a really long time in this setup, because the mushroom actually has to go all the way right here and then all the way back. So generally, if it's just this setup on its own, that doesn't make much of a difference. However, if the troll is put into a level, and maybe there are some trolls before or after that, each time the player does this section, he has to wait the entire time for the mushroom to slowly go over there and back. So this setup right here is basically the same. However, there are some improvements to the time it takes, which is also an important factor. So if there's any way to reduce the waiting time, it should always be an option to do it that way, that has less waiting time. And the biggest improvement is, of course, this mushroom right here, which now goes along the fastest possible conveyor belts. So it's going to be a lot faster than in the other setup. However, there's yet another improvement. In this setup, the block right here releases a bob-omb, which then has to go down the full bob-omb timer until it explodes. And in this setup, the bob-omb is already present right here, and the block instead releases a big muncher. And the big muncher has the advantage that it comes out of the block, lets the bob-omb explode immediately without any timer that goes down, and then gets killed because it's actually too small to spawn in this location right here. If you would use a small muncher, the problem would be that the muncher can spawn and would then block the door because it falls down here. So by using the big muncher, there's actually another time improvement, because the bob-omb explodes immediately. And as you can see, in this setup, the mushroom is much faster. So this setup right here is more of a setup to showcase how to be a few steps ahead of the player. So how to actually make a troll that will get most of the people. So in this setup, you start at this point right here, and the exit is above this door right here. So right here, you're presented with an seemingly obvious decision between a power block and a spring. I mean, the easiest solution is just take the power block, because why would it be the spring? However, if you do that and activate the power block right here, you can pass for now. However, the second muncher that is needed in order to go through the other door also died. So the next time you come into this area, you may think, well, then it's really the spring. And once you go here, like at least at this point, you realize, yeah, the spring can also solve this problem for me, because you can kick the muncher up. However, that's the troll as well, because if you kick the muncher up, it will go into this sideways spring right here, and then it blocks the path. I mean, you can still get through, but since you need Big Mario to break this block right here, your path is still blocked right now. Also, one thing that you should definitely do if you have like exactly this setup is to put some kind of anti-soft block right here, because right now, if I wouldn't have the spring, there would be no way for me to get out of this pit. So if I left the spring over there, I would be stuck right now. And soft locks is generally a thing that you do not want in troll levels, like actual soft locks. Anti-soft locks are something different. I mean, they are fun and there is a way to die, but in an actual softlock nobody's gonna have fun. So the real solution is a little bit tricky, but also not too hard. It's just to activate the power block right here before you go too far over there. And after doing all this stuff, one thing should be made sure, and that's in general helpful for all the trolls in a level, is that once you know what to do, it should be easy to do it every time. And of course, once the player has figured out what he has to do in the setup, it's easy to just every time go here and activate the power block. So the actual strategy is not hard to do, it's just maybe not the one that you would figure out first. So now let's move on to the, in my opinion, most important type of troll when it comes to a troll level, and that is a troll like this, because this type of troll will get 90% of the people. So if you have one troll in your level that you really want people to fall for, then make it a troll of this type. Like if you have a CP1 and you really want people to fall for this CP1, you should consider to make it a CP1 of this type of troll. And this troll is what I call the ABC troll, because it actually has 3 tiers to it. There's one really obvious solution that most players will probably immediately not even think about doing this because it's way too obvious. Then there is the less obvious solution, which is in this case the block on the right side, right here. However, that's also not it, but it at least provides you with a hint for what you actually have to do, and that is the third and least obvious solution, which would be to break the block where the Bob-omb came out of. And the reason why this is of course the least obvious solution is because at first glance it looks like this wouldn't help you at all. But it doesn't really depend on the setup, it depends on the type of troll that this is, which is the 3 solutions troll. And I guess that most people will fall for a troll like this because of the way that people think when they play troll levels, and that is that they want to actually avoid trolls and outsmart the creator of the level. And since there's this obviously fake solution, they will think that they already outsmarted the creator once they see this solution. And with 2 options, most people are satisfied, so nobody's gonna look for something that is even more hidden if he thinks that he already found the obvious and the less obvious solution. Like nobody's gonna actually look for an even less obvious solution if there are already at least 2 options to choose from. So I guess if you really want one troll in an entire level where most players are gonna fall for, you should definitely make it a troll of this type, where there's one obviously fake solution, one solution that makes the player think, oh, I figured out the hidden solution, and then the actual hidden solution. And if the actual hidden solution is really hard to find, or like really not what players would do naturally, then you should also include some kind of hint if you do the wrong thing that then tells you what the right thing is. Like in this setup right here, where if you break this block and you still don't get it right here, then you're presented with the hint question mark block. And since in the entire setup there's only this question mark block, then the player should come to the conclusion that it's the solution to break this block right here. So now, let's say that you found a few trolls that you want to include into your level, and you also optimized all the setups on their own so that you're happy with them. And for this example, I just used the same 3 setups that I talked about earlier. So now all you have to basically still do to make a whole level out of it is to put the setups in an order which makes sense. So since in this section it basically doesn't matter how we end up here, but we leave the section as Big Mario. So we should make sure that we are not already Big Mario when we come into this section, because of course that would ruin the entire troll right here. But other than that, it doesn't really matter. So if we have any items, any power-ups or whatever, doesn't really matter. So for the other 2 sections, we already start as Big Mario. So it would make sense to use this section here first, because we are Small Mario, and then we become Big Mario in this section. So then, what section should we use next? I mean, theoretically it doesn't make much of a difference. However, if we use this section as the second one, we lose our power up at the end of the section, because we have to go into the door on top of the Muncher. And that would mean that when we go into this section afterwards, we would have to give Mario another power up. As I said, it doesn't make much of a difference in this case, because I mean, you just put a power up on top of a track, on top of the door, and it's done. But like, the flow of the level would just be a little bit better if we instead had this section as the second section, because if this was the second section, then it would make more sense, because we end up as Big Mario in this section, and we also leave this section as Big Mario. So we have a flawless walkthrough of 3 sections. We come here in basically any state but Big Mario, we get Big Mario, we go into this section, keep Big Mario through this section, and lose him at the end of this section. So that makes perfect sense. Also, we could say that maybe this spring right here is something that Mario already carries through before he enters this door right here. So before this section there could be another section that gives Mario a spring, then he enters this room with the spring, which doesn't really change anything about this troll. However, in the next room he uses this spring then to get the power block, which is once again something that if we had used this section right here as the second one, if Mario already had a spring right here, the troll could be easily cheated, because if you already have a spring you can just go up here and then have a spring and a power block. So no matter what option is the right option, you always have the right option with you. So of course that's also something to consider when you want to de-cheese your level. It's always helpful to think about each section and how you end up in each section, like with what power-up state and with what items, and what items and power-ups you have at the end of each section, and then try to fit them together as good as you can. So that's it for today, and I hope you enjoyed the video.